procedures, and I would encourage everybody to get educated on the rules and procedures of the Clemson Planning Commission. These were adopted initially in 2013. In 2023, they were updated. And during this first session, it'll be up to 15 minutes, where each speaker may speak up to 3 minutes. And we encourage everybody to do so. So we'll go ahead and open the public session. Is there anybody that would like to speak?
This for items not on the agenda? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And we would like to make sure when people speak that they do come to the podium. That do you have a sign-in sheet there?
Yes, sir.
We have a sign-in sheet, and state your name and where you're from, and we look forward to that. So anything not on the agenda? Okay. Any motion to close this?
No? Don't take a motion.
Okay.
Just close it.
Public discussion is closed. Let's go to adoption of minutes from January 28th, 2024. Everybody should have received a copy of those minutes. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, deletions?
It said January 28th, but it was January.
January 8th, I'm sorry.
Yes, just the spelling of my name. Page 3.
What's the correct spelling?
B-U-R-T-O-N.
It's spelled correct in one place, and in the other place it's not. So Mr. Fred Burton, 150 Downs.
Okay.
It's supposed to be Burton, B-U-R-T-O-N. Right. Okay. So I vote to approve the minutes from January 8th, 2024 with the correction of Mr. Fred Burton's name, 150 Downs Boulevard.
I'll second.
So all in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? So moved. We'll now move on to, we have 2 action items. Just so in case you have not heard, the station did pull their application, and it was on the website. It was put up late. We wanted to make sure everybody, if you don't know what the station is a site of the old Bilo Center up on Highway 93. And then there'll be an action item that we'll go into, and it's PUD 00017723 called Clemson Hub. So, is there an update, that presentation from the applicant?
Yes.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Andy Savoy. I'm with the developer and applicant Core Spaces. We are based in Chicago, Illinois at 1643 North Milwaukee Avenue, 5th floor. And I've been back and forth here every couple weeks presenting on this project since about August. Can I get the mouse? Yes. That works. And so we were here last week presenting to City Council, getting their feedback. I have kind of greatly abridged this version of the presentation because a lot of you have seen a lot of this stuff already. And so who we are, Core Spaces is a student-focused housing developer based in Chicago. We have been in that space for about 10 years. And in that time, we've developed about 30,000 beds all across So we're a large owner and operator of apartment buildings across the country. We have lots of local experience. You're looking at the Pier, which many of you may know, that's a over 2,000 bed deal with a local partner. We also recently purchased Epic and Clemson Lofts. So the point being, we are a long-term stakeholder. We are not a developer that's going to build and flip. We keep our projects and manage them long-term, 10 years plus. So I'm here today because our company has the parcels shown here in purple either under contract or we have an easement over them. And we intend to build a housing project here, a multi-use, kind of mixed-use project, which would be a planned development. The draft ordinance has been submitted to the city, and I'm here to just kind of give everybody the lay of the land as far as, all of the changes we've made since the last time we spoke. You're looking at about 5.5 acres. It's in the super block bounded by 123 College and Kiwi Trail. Most of the frontage is along Kiwi Trail, and then to the north and to the south, we have frontage directly up against the Corps of Engineers land. And a lot of the acreage is right there directly in the center of the super block. These are kind of the existing conditions of that site. It's a lot of vacant residential homes along Kiwi Trail, and there is kind of an older office complex surface parked directly in the center, accessible via Wall Street. And as we started to think about how we develop this might be frozen. As we started to think about how we wanted to develop this site, we did reference kind of the local material available about what should go here, what does the community want here, what have planners decided would be great here. And so we looked at the Uptown Next plan. This is our site. Could you go to the next slide? For some reason, this is
Yeah, I think it's.
you have a mouse.
Yes, I think the mouse. I forget each.
There you go. So this is our site outlined in purple, kind of overlaid right on the Uptown Next plan. So you can kind of see how our site relates here. And you'll notice a few things. You see a lot of student housing, which is the light yellow color. You see an expansion of Abernathy Park. You see retail kind of activating that park. You see a public plaza. You see kind of extended vehicular routes and also pedestrian routes kind of to the north and to the south of this purple shape. And so as we started to formulate a plan for what we were going to do here, we wanted to make sure we kind of accomplished and checked all those boxes. We don't have control of the whole super block, so we can't make it exactly like it was planned in this image, but we can still achieve a lot of those same overarching goals. And so what you're going to see here, so I've skipped a lot of the background, but the first time we were here, we had done these aspirational renderings of what could Abernathy Park really be like if we included some space in the private section of our site to actually add on to the park and actually add acreage in terms of a publicly accessible portion of the park that's on private land. So there would be like a public access easement over this private land to basically increase the size of the park and kind of achieve that goal that was set out in the Uptown Next plan. So what you're about to see is a project that has 450 units. It's a maximum of 1,325 beds. We're currently sitting a little bit less than that right now. 8,500 square feet of retail in the plaza section, which you'll see that retail kind of activating the plaza and bringing the public out to the plaza. At the tallest, it's about 80 feet, which is roughly consistent with the taller buildings in town. And you'll see 674 parking spaces for residents and 75 structured parking spaces for the public, which would be free structured parking spaces accessible to the public. So anybody who wanted to come patronize the retail or just enjoy the park could actually park there for free. It's all about 700,000 square feet of built area, which is about 400,000 of actual apartment building, and then the rest is parking deck. And then it's just above an acre of publicly accessible plaza space on privately owned land, which would be kind of accomplishing the goal of expanding that park in a way, and also programming it to make sure that it's kind of a community center that's accessible to everybody in Clemson, you know, with retail and all the public parking and other public amenities there. And so you'll see in the next slide, actually the one after this. So you'll see, you know, the red line is our property line. Everything outside of that, we've made aspirational renderings for what that could be. That is not included in our proposed scope of work for a couple reasons. The first one is that is going to take some kind of public process that we don't want to be integrated into this project. We think those should be two separate kind of paths. And we'll be generating a significant tax increment that could help to fund that work in the public right-of-way across from our property. But just to be clear, everything we're proposing is inside of that red line. So the plaza space, that 1 acre plaza space that adds on to Abernathy Park, that's what we're talking about in this proposal. Just going back to just a summary of everything we've done so far. You know, we started out at around 1,310 beds, so our bed count has stayed pretty much the same. We have added to the public parking that we've proposed, and we actually reduced the height of the parking structure. We took a whole floor off at your recommendation. So this basically tracks the metrics. We were here on the 7th of November, on the 11th of December. We came back last week, and this is where we currently sit. Where basically we have added, every time we've been here, we've made the public parking structure slightly larger. We have taken a floor off of the private parking structure because there was some concern that it might be too large, too tall. So starting with this image here, this kind of shows how the proposed building sits on our site. It's accessible mostly from Kiwi Trail, but also from Wall Street. And so there is a vehicular access point from Wall Street. You see there's a large precast parking structure right in the center of the site. And then we have kind of these residential arms that kind of extend out from that parking structure and wrap it, so you can't really see the parking structure from the park. These arms create this kind of plaza space that opens out towards Abernathy Park and Lake Hartwell. And there will be uses kind of within this plaza space, our residential lobby, some retail space, and then some townhomes that open right out onto the park would all be there. So we're programming those spaces to have active uses. So it feels nice to be in that park and nothing kind of desolate or blank walls or anything like that. The main service access is actually from Wall Street. We have a service court back here, which we've worked out with the fire department and trash, make sure that they can actually do a hammerhead turn, get back there, collect the trash, and you know, all the fire access issues have been worked out. We are also flanking this parking deck with some additional townhomes so that when viewed from College, you're not just looking at a blank parking deck, and we have some renderings of what that looks like later. These are the existing conditions of the site. I'm going to blow through a lot of these really quickly. This kind of restates exactly what I just said. Just kind of shows you the turning radiuses in that vehicular plaza court. And this image kind of shows you.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
They hadn't done this in the past, but in these presentations, they start out 10 minutes. The chair is going to go ahead and give you 10 more minutes
Okay, I
to
will
finish the
roll through that.
presentation.
Absolutely. Okay, so the main challenge here is basically there's almost a 40-foot drop from Wall Street down to Kiwi Trail. And so what you'll see is that on the Wall Street side, we're only 5 stories. On the Kiwi Trail side, we're 7 stories, and that's because we're built into the side of the hill. This is a utility plan, which we can reference if we need to talk about it later. I don't want to waste the time talking about it. So this is the plaza level plan. You see in orange, that's our residential lobby with all of our active kind of amenity functions. So gym, leasing office, active space, closely monitored at all times. The red is retail, and so that's in the center of the plaza. You'll see the yellow are all residential units, and all of these units shown on this plan are townhomes with kind of frontal entry, so you don't actually have to go through the lobby to go into those townhomes, so we can go into that later, but we want to lease to anyone who wants to lease with us, and so we thought that by providing units where you don't have to walk through a student housing entry, we might actually appeal to some non-students. And some of these units have great locations, like right in the park. So we thought that would be exciting. The public portion of the parking deck is accessible from Kiwi Trail along the south of the site, and then you could actually drive up a ramp and it'll connect you up to Wall Street. So if you wanted to, you could actually drive through and connect up to Wall Street or vice versa and not actually have to go down Kiwi Trail. And so we're trying to basically limit the amount of traffic, take pressure off of Kiwi Trail so that these two sides of the park, the plaza and then the park itself, kind of become unified a little bit. And then importantly, if you were to park here as a public user, you could actually walk around the elevator core and come out through a breezeway and actually be right in the park at the same level. So ADA, you could be in a wheelchair and you wouldn't have to go down any ramp or anything. As you move up the building, you see where that ramp comes out, which kind of spits you out right in our service court, and you could then continue up past the townhomes and connect to Wall Street. This large parking deck is the private parking deck, and then all of the yellow blocks you're seeing are all residential units that kind of flank that parking deck and hide it from view. And then on the top of the parking deck, we do have an amenity space with a pool. We have made that smaller, as you'll note from what we ambitiously showed last time. This is a diagram showing pedestrian and vehicular traffic, and so we have actually a breezeway that would allow pedestrians to walk under the building and come from Wall Street down into the park, and then this is also showing how a vehicle could go up through the public parking component and connect from Kiwi Trail to Wall Street. And this is kind of a section showing what that would look like. So this is a vehicular path up through the building and all the way up to Wall Street. Barely see that. Okay, so for the elevations, our inspiration were actually these old mill buildings with these great kind of colorful brick, rhythmic kind of elements here. Felt very heavy and very true to the area. And so, and we also like this kind of very simple, clean geometry. I think this is in Charleston. But you see a lot of buildings, these old mill buildings in Greenville and around the area. So we started to play with this kind of brick rhythm and also this clean geometry, these two concepts. And so our proposed materials are brick with some ephes and stucco, several colors of brick, and then also fiber cement paneling to create kind of a foreground and background condition. These are our elevations, which we can get into more detail if we want to discuss them. This is actually a view of those townhomes that we have now flanking the parking structure. And so the bottom image there is a rendering showing what you'd see if you were standing right there. And so it's a five level parking structure with 3 levels of townhomes that would be flanking in front of it. These are some renderings of what that kind of plaza space could look like. We have this kind of central brick retail element that could be like a newspaper stand, standalone retail. That's a view from Abernathy Park. This is that kind of central retail element. This would be the main apartment entry. It's kind of a view towards the lake from that entry. Again, that's kind of central retail element. These are the townhomes, which would be along the north face of the park. And this is that underpass that actually brings Wall Street underneath the building. This is a list of everything you've asked us to do that we've done. We can go back and reference that later, because I think it'll take up too much time for me to rattle it off. But basically, the public benefits are, we're doing a lot of things that the Uptown Next study has proposed, including the public connections, the expanding the park, activating the park with retail. We're removing eyesore properties, we're removing curb cuts. And then also we are proposing to upgrade the sidewalk so that there is a clear route to the existing CAT bus stop. We're providing public parking spaces on private land. And then also we're providing, or we're projecting something like a $2.1 million per year tax increment, about $600,000 of which would actually go to Clemson for the foreseeable future, which could be used and leveraged to improve the park on the Abernathy, or on the other side of Kiwi Trail, and help the, kind of be a catalyst for the blocks development, and kind of push development in that way. So that's where I am. Hopefully I didn't.
Okay. You stayed well within your time.
Okay.
Thank you very much. At this point, we're going to open it up for public comment. According to Section 8 or Section 7 in our bylaws, we are to open this up. If the speaker would come, each speaker would get up, come in, sign their name, and are limited to 3 minutes. If there's something else that you need more than that, you can request an extension. But it's very important for this process to take place. So we'll open it up for public comments.
I have a question about the public parking. You said you gave us 75 spaces for public parking. Do you think that's enough for the public parking?
I do. It's double what would normally be required.
Because, I mean, how if you have an event, you know, at the park, like a wedding or something, you're going to need more parking than 75 spaces. I mean, 75 spaces, you know, sounds to me that it's more for the residents residents of the apartments than it is for the residents of the city.
Can I respond to that, or what are the rules?
Well, we're going to ease into those. Normally, we will save those for the back, but please go ahead and respond to that at this time.
So we would control the public parking spaces with signage, and also by closing off and towing anybody who's in there. So any residents that try to park there overnight would be towed. We have plenty of resident parking in the precast deck. And so for the 75 spaces, we do think that's going to be enough. There are also 9 street spaces that are not included in that count. There's 19 park spaces, so you're already over 100 there. So I do think that's enough. That's more than triple what exists there now, and it's more than double what would be required for that amount of commercial space. And so we are confident that that is sufficient. And if there were to be some kind of event, like a wedding or something, we could work on that on a case-by-case basis, because we do have 700 more parking spaces in the private deck that, depending on the kind of year, on the time of year, may be available, but just can't commit outright to that at all times.
Now, how about handicap parking? I mean, do you have handicap parking closer to the park?
We would, yes, we would have handicap parking. There is a requirement to have a certain number of handicap parking spaces closest to the elevators, and the elevators are right next to the entrance to the park, so handicap spaces would be closest.
Okay. I mean, any more handicap places closer? I mean, closer, so people, you know, won't have to walk so far.
I think that if you actually look at the plan of that public parking, it's one of the most convenient places you could park if you wanted to actually go into the park, because you're only, 30 feet away or 50 feet away from actually where you would park to walking around the corner of the elevator bank and going through that breezeway, and then you're in the middle of the plaza.
I mean, I just don't think 75 spaces is enough for public parking. I think it needs more. Thank you.
Thank you. For future comments, what we'll do is have the developer note it and then have him answer it at the end of the public comment section, which is what the bylaws of the Planning Commission say. They can be found on the City of Clemson website. Any other comments from the public? Hi.
I emailed my comments in to y'all already. I just want to make sure that you have them and that they're addressed. My name is Nanda Edgerton.
When did you send those, Nanda? I'm sorry.
Before 5 o'clock.
Yeah, they went out today. I sent them home to let them.
And you are going to discuss them for my request, or should I just stand up here and do it?
Well, we haven't sent those to the developer yet. If you want to list for the public and for everybody else who's watching your comments, I think it would be very appropriate, and we can attach those to the minute meetings so that we do have a record of that.
Okay. So, wait, I have to get my phone because now I don't remember what I wrote to y'all. Okay, thanks. Thank you. So I was just wondering, how much time the developer, before you come up, who should I look at when I'm saying this?
Well, if it's a question that he's going to address after everybody's done, you can just say your comments and he will address them.
Well, I have a couple of questions. So I was just wondering, before all the renderings and, your proposal and everything was put together for Clemson, how much time did you actually spend in Clemson to understand what the city is about and figure out, what the dynamic around here is, instead of just comparing us to larger cities and your successes across the country, because you can't really compare apples to oranges. And I feel anytime that question is put forth to y'all, it's deflected to a larger city success, which you can't, whatever's gonna work for, let's say, Tucson, might not work for Clemson, just because it's completely different. So how did you come up with your ideas? How long have you actually been in town and hanging out and just checking it out and just seeing everything and really understanding what you're dealing with, other than just seeing a plot of land to develop?
Okay. Go ahead with your next one.
Okay, sorry.
And we need to be mindful of
I'm just confused.
the time.
Okay.
That's okay. We'll work through it together.
So, yeah, so the other questions there are like all associated basically with that comment. It's just broken down, which there's a little bit more detail. And there was another one. Nathan, there was one more in here. I don't want to be in your phone.
No, you're fine. Oh, you got me all upside down here. Oh.
Yeah. So it's like all related, but there was another one that I sent in.
I think this is the one that.
That's the only one for Abernathy?
That's the only one that I have.
Okay. So, yeah, so it's like a multi-level question. So it's like, how did they come up with their proposal, their ideas? How much time did they actually spend time hanging out with locals and figuring things out? Why do we always get compared to larger cities for what the success might be or might not be for Clemson? And, who's gonna dredge somebody texted me a question that they wanted to ask. Who's dredging the lake on a regular basis? Who's gonna be paying for that?
Okay. I mean, as soon as you're,
That's all I have for that. And did you say that you were going to send my notes that I gave in to the developers?
send your notes and we will attach them to
Okay,
the
yeah,
minutes. Does that work?
yes, sir.
Okay. Would you like to address her questions?
Yeah, sorry.
And you can sit down. You can,
So as far as timing Clemson,
He needs to.
Core's involvement in Clemson started with the pier, which is now delivered.
can you, if you could come up to the podium so we could get at it, and
Did you want me to sit down?
yes, ma'am.
I'm sitting.
Thank you.
Core's involvement in Clemson started with the pier, and so that is now delivering. That was over 3 years ago. We started coming here, and there's been someone from Core in town every week or every other week for the past 3 years. Now, it hasn't been me all the time, but it's been somebody from our team. We now own 3 projects, and we're working on this one, so we are a long-term stakeholder here. Our office is based in Chicago. There's no disguising that. And so, you know, we've done a lot of things. We have done a project with similar ingredients in Tucson that had a public plaza component with retail. This is not Tucson. We understand that. We do have, you know, a few other projects. One in Blacksburg that is a very similar size. It's a similar town in terms of non-student population. But that did lack a retail component. And so, to be fair, we've never been in this exact scenario before. And I think that there's nothing that I'm going to be able to say where, you know, we've done this exact thing already before. This is a very unique and important project for us. But I would hope that you would see our involvement in the market and seeing as how we are the long-term owner of a lot of apartment buildings in town as confidence and just a sign of how important we think this market is. We love it, and we want to be the kind of the best landlord in town, and we want to basically try to make it better. So,
Did that address your question?
Yeah. I mean, my main concern was, let's not work on theory, and let's work, you know, I'm a visual person, so I have to really get into it before we see the big picture. And it's great when you're reading stuff or, you know, like in theory, but the actual practice is much more accurate. So I was concerned about how much actual practice was put in instead of just working on a theory of what Clemson is and trying to make the best for what's best for the community.
Thank you. I think you had another question. Nathan, could I defer that to staff on dredging the lake?
Sure, we've had several conversations with the Army Corps of Engineers. We have a preliminary dredging permit in with the Army Corps of Engineers. The answer to who would pay for that is twofold. The initial impact fees from the developer would pay for what we would hope would be the lion's share of dredging that the first time. It was last dredged in 2001, so it's not something that the ongoing maintenance is not particularly regular, but we're still very much in the process of gathering those costs, and so it would definitely be initially the impact fees, and then tax dollars would go towards it in the future.
Thank you.
Did that get all your questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, wanted to make sure. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else who has any questions or comments regarding this project? Just want to make sure everybody has plenty of time. So if there are no other questions or comments, is there a motion that we close this section of comments and go to the action item for the board?
I so move. Second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, the same. Okay. As we're here with this, any comments from the board or any motion to be made? This is an action item for us.
Yep, I have a few things that I made notes of. The 5-level parking structure was 7 levels, right? And now it's 5?
That's correct.
Okay. And the townhomes are now residential units that can be rented by anyone that, it's not a rent by the bedroom for the townhomes. You rent the townhome?
We would do it either way, but there would not be a difference in overall rent.
So the townhomes could be rent by the bedroom.
They could be rent by the bedroom.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Fred?
I have a question as to how the profile of Kiowee Trail, the profile and the alignment of Kiowee Trail be changed.
It would be changed not much at all. We're keeping the center line in the exact same place. We are adding some on-street parallel parking to the north side, so our side of Kiowee Trail, which would be added as part of the project. But the center line and overall right-of-way would remain exactly as
The
is.
profile, the grades. Okay.
That's
I presume you've done some traffic studies. Is there any condition that would warrant making the intersection with Clemson Boulevard a right-in, right-out only operation?
So Jeff is our civil engineer. He could probably answer that in a better way than I could.
Sure. Jeff Halliburton with Thomas and Hutton Engineering. So I want to make sure I understand the intersection you're talking about.
On Tiger Boulevard.
Tiger Boulevard, so Tiger Boulevard and Kiowee Trail today is a right-in, right-out. That's got a median that protects any lefts. Wall Street is the same thing on 123. It's a right-in, right-out. We have done a traffic study. It has been distributed to staff for it's in review process, not only with the city and with DOT. But right now, the main intersection is really going to be College Avenue and Kiowee Trail. Right now, with the projections, we did updated counts in January when all the students returned and we had our regular traffic patterns. With the updated traffic counts and the projections from this project, plus a couple of, there's another project I think that's under consideration along College Avenue. Those were incorporated into the study, and it's shown that College Avenue and Kiowee Trail will still operate at an acceptable, up to the worst is a level C during peak times, which is pretty good. And then the other recommendation, Wall Street and College Avenue. Right now, there's no median prohibiting a left turn. There are double yellow lines, but the recommendation is that Wall Street and College become a right-in, right-out. That came from the DOT is what they have recommended, that happen on Wall Street.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. One more question. The plans I have the retail located on the very north end of the project, and I don't see any, I only see about 4 parking spaces. So, and also how do the retail establishments get deliveries by truck?
Right. I'm going to flip back to that ground level because you might be looking at an older plan because the retail has moved to the center of the plaza. And so I'll show you right here. So this red, these red spaces would be the retail spaces. The public parking deck is this entire plate here. And so we've said 75 spaces. There are 85 there if you count. So that's to basically account for our employees and staff. So the actual loading could occur off of Kiowee Trail, which would stay open if there needed to be loading. We also have that We also have a service court here that would, so if there's a large truck or something, you would actually pull whatever's being loaded into a hydraulic elevator that's located right in this triangular section of the building that would then go down and unload right here into the back of that retail space. And so there is off-street loading available via Wall Street, and you'd come down to our kind of on-site service court.
Okay, well, I did have an older plan that I was looking at, so that answers my questions. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I've got a few. Just a quick follow-up on Tanya's question about townhomes. You said they could be rented either way, and I'm just curious about that process before I get into some of the other stuff, because you know, whatever the final count is on them, could a person jump and say, I just want to rent a bedroom? Do you guys assign them, or if 5 people show up and say, I just want a bedroom, could they then knock out 5 of those units basically to be rented as a unit by having 1 bedroom in each of those 5 units rented?
We've done it either way. So most of our leasing traffic, people come in with already knowing who they want to live with. We do have a fair amount of like international students who say, I don't know, but roommate match me. So we have done roommate matching before. And then we've also in certain markets done rent by the unit, but then the guarantee in the lease is only for whatever percentage. So if it's like a 4-bedroom, then each person only guarantees 25% of what the lease payment is. So then it's leasing by the unit, but it's still kind of leasing by the bed. So we've done it in many different ways. I don't know if that's getting to the heart of what you're.
No, my question is to say for a younger family, a group of people that wanted to rent a unit,
Right.
Mom, dad, kids, whatever, they just want to be there.
Right.
To make sure that's available, I'm trying to figure out how you fill those up. In other words, if you have your international student says, I don't have any roommates, I need a bed, I want to be in the townhouse. Okay, great, you guys put them in the townhouse. Do you then fill up the individual rooms in that townhouse first, or does somebody say the next person says, you get another international student that says, I too don't have any roommates, I just want to rent a bedroom in one of the townhouses. Do they default into the one with the opening one? I'm trying to see if you would fill, basically if you have 10 townhouses that you rent either way, and you have 10 students who have no roommates, is it possible to wind up with 1 student in each townhouse? Okay.
Because most students want to live with people they know, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice by taking units offline that would otherwise be attractive to groups who already know each other.
Okay, so if you had somebody that you basically would fill one before any non-roommate went into
Right.
another one, okay?
That's correct.
All right. Let me get in some notes. Okay, minutes with no change, Hope Clemson. Curious, and it might be something I need to address with staff about details on the easement as far as what that all involves for the plaza. The way laws are enforced, is it enforced with city ordinances? Do you guys make the rules and the city just has the right to use it? That kind of thing. In other words, is it truly a public space, or is it a space that you guys allow the public to use?
It would be the second thing you said. So it would be our property.
So city ordinance would not apply on that property unless you guys chose to make an in-house rule that encompassed
Right.
that.
So there would be a public use access easement over the private property, but we would still be responsible for paying real estate taxes, for the maintenance of the property. We'd still have to make sure, like if we have an event with, let's just say, street vendors, they would have to check in with us and all carry the insurance just in case there's a slip and fall situation.
Right.
So it would be a public use access over privately owned property.
Okay, I just wanted to check with that because I think we mentioned it before about if there's an event down there, and especially if we get to the point like everybody's kind of hoping of where those 2 spaces become one of, I can stand right here and do this, but I can't stand right here and do that same thing.
Right, and in the ordinance, we have actually put opening hours to be consistent with the underlying zoning.
Right, I'm just worried about other stuff that might get caught in the crosshairs, like city leash law, things like that, where it's, you guys have a rule maybe that pets have to be leashed, but that's not a ticket or enforceable, so if somebody's got their dog running around the plaza, your security guard, corporate liability is a whole different ballgame. People aren't allowed to touch people and do things like that, so as far as getting a rule enforced versus enforcing a city ordinance, that's a little bit of a concern, but I've got my answer. I just wanted you to know where I was going with that, of the rule versus the ordinance and enforcement. the commercial use, you guys, and I'll get to a couple of things, but I'm going off, has the ordinance been updated since we got it, or is what we've got what we're going off of?
This is the most recent.
This is the one, okay. All right, so the commercial space for the,
Point of information. It is still possible, once it goes to council through here, for it could be updated further, or from comments, it could be updated further. Is that correct?
Yes, as a recommending body, council has the ability to change the ordinance based on your vote or comments or anything this evening.
I just didn't want to ask a question off something that's been changed.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So for the commercial space, you guys are planning to reserve 40 feet out along the front of the commercial?
That's correct.
Okay.
Depth, basically, so that you could have outside tables and.
Will that be partitioned in any way, or just traffic flow in and out? I mean, how is that gonna, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what's the general plan for that? Because if you have tables just sitting out there, unless you have somebody standing there saying, no, you guys can't sit here, you have people wanting to use the plaza of the park that want to sit down may be at those tables.
So the way we've typically seen it with sidewalk seating is that the retailer basically gangs up their tables and chains them up at night to make sure nobody takes them, and then sets them up.
I was talking during the day to separate, like to make sure those tables aren't used by somebody having a picnic
Right.
versus somebody trying to eat at the restaurant. Or is that just left up to the restaurant to handle?
That's left up to the retailer.
Okay.
They can use that space if they want. They also don't have to use it if they have no plans to do so.
Okay.
So, but that would be basically, we would want them to have the ability to do that, because the point is to try to activate that space with people, so.
Okay, so, and I'm not trying to dig too far into the weeds on this, but this is one of those situations where I was curious about rules versus ordinance and things like that. So in the lease, I'm assuming that they're going to be entitled to that space. They aren't going to have to say it up front. But somebody throws out a picnic blanket that is sitting down in their 40 feet, and they just don't like the guy taking a nap in front of their restaurant. Like, can they just walk out there? There's no tables. Can they just walk out there and say, you got to go, man. This is my spot. It's reserved for my restaurant or whatever. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm just asking.
I think that in that specific scenario, it would probably be a call to the landlord, because, we would be the retailer's landlords as well.
Correct.
So if there's really a guy sleeping on the sidewalk and it's an issue.
Well, I just mean like even a kid taking a nap between exams, like propped up on his book bag or something, but he's, impeding the flow, but there's no tables there, it's a public park. Most people would assume prop up on a tree, do whatever, take your nap. And that's one of those things where it gets into, there's this stuff that's laid out, and with that being a public space, but then we're also reserving some of it, but we're trying to keep it open and not separate it with a railing or anything to make sure it stays open and kind of combined, like how that all functions without causing a problem, and does it change later? Like, we really wanted to keep it open so it felt like 5/8 of an acre, because I think you said the whole plaza is 30,000 square feet. Right. So it feels like 5/8, but if we take away this, we're actually down to a half an acre versus 5/8. So then it feels smaller because you've got this section sectioned off, even if it's not being used because you had to section it off because you guaranteed it to them. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Right. So you wouldn't want it to be sectioned off and then wasted and not used.
Right, running into that, but at the same time, then you've got the problem of, well, if we leave it open and they have 1 or 2 tables out, but it's guaranteed to them in their spot, then can they just tell people to get off their space?
I would think, so we're asking you to allow sidewalk seating, which typically requires a separate permit. And so the reason why we're asking for that is because we want to offer that to our tenants. If they're paying for it, they're going to want to be able to enforce it.
Right, I understand it completely, but typically with sidewalk seating like downtown here, it butts up to a road. So nobody's going to go take a nap in a road or a parallel parking spot. Like nobody's going to, the busy traffic on the side, like nobody's going to just pull up there like it's a park. And that's, and I like the idea of the commercial with the public park. It's just a lot of the use concerns me of how that's going to mesh. And we don't have to dwell on that because there's a couple other things I want to get to. I get what you're saying. It'll be up to the leasee. They'll probably contact you and you guys will handle it.
Right.
Okay. And if you guys want to jump in and whenever, y'all just tell me to hold on. The public parking, I think you went over it briefly. You said 75 spots. And you did say that the map shows 85, because one of my questions was if that 75 included parking for building maintenance staff, leasing agents, custodians, people that basically work for you.
Right.
Was that included in that 75? And how much of that 75 is actually public parking and not designated for commercial, designated for you guys, or anything like that?
So if you count those spaces, there are 85 there. So
Okay.
I was already factoring 10 employee spaces into my math.
Okay.
So if you ask me how many spaces will be free and open to the public, will be 75 spaces within.
That includes
within
the
that
commercial
garage.
use. Granted, I know that the public is gonna go eat at the restaurant, do stuff,
Right,
but what I'm saying is.
that includes retail uses, that's correct.
Right,
And
since
so-
since the plan is to get rid of the parking at the park eventually, this will replace it. I'm just trying to see what our net gain.
Right, and so I believe that the retail parking requirement in the underlying zoning district is 3 per thousand, and we have 8,500 feet of retail, so that'll be roughly 27, 28 spaces, and we're providing 75. So a little bit, so 48 spaces more. 48 spaces for the park.
Well, in the ordinance, I thought you guys had said that 32 would be designated for the commercial use.
Yeah, but we assumed 4 per thousand, and I think if we actually look at the underlying zoning code, it's 3 per thousand.
Right, and that's why I asked about the code, is because this, what we talk about, as far as I know, doesn't matter. When this gets filed, this is what the law is.
Right.
So that's why I'm getting clarification on this, because if it's something that just needs to be quicked and typed up or whatever, but that's why I bring this up.
That's correct.
Because in here, you guys have 32 designated, but it also says 75 and not 85. So that helps with the ratio a little bit, because I didn't know if it was 32 minus 10 or 15 minus, and then to get down to whatever.
But yeah, so as a clarifying matter, it's 75 total. We were breaking that up as 32 just to relate it to the existing zoning code.
Okay.
But we are not contemplating any different signage between retail and park.
So it's just
So
going to
this is
be
free public
for all
parking that
during-
is open from 8 to 10 p.m.
Okay.
And then is closed. So,
So it's 75 for everybody?
yep.
Okay. Public parking, market rate full, okay. So there's another one about parking that I may have a note on the next page I'll get back to, but it has to do with the bed count. So with the market rate multifamily housing, you've got 1325 bed maximum to include 40% double occupancy. Now, so is that 1325 the total number of beds in that building with single occupancy, or is that if you were to max out your 40% double
That's the
occupancy?
total number of occupants in the building. So the number of bedrooms is less. It's like 1,000 bedrooms, but if you actually count the beds, since there are certain numbers.
So if it took 35 sans the 40%, that would be the number of beds.
That's
I just want to make sure it wasn't 1325 plus 40%.
That is correct. The
Okay.
1325 is the total number of occupants max.
Okay, and then parking for the residents in here, let's see, it says page 2, let me get that. There's a table that says one thing, and then a passage that says another. And it's, private parking for residents. The plan development shall include a minimum of the lesser of 613 spaces or parking for 50% of the final bed count. And then it's got the private access or whatever, but in another section, it says that but it said that the maximum, that the residential units would be parked at 50% with enough for guests and residents enough. So I'm trying to match that up with that 1325. And I get that if you only have the 1,000 or around there, so if you take the 40% off, then that kind of works out. But if you guys go up to your maximum, then you're not at 50% and you don't have any guest parking. And I'm trying to square that and didn't know if that's just something that just needs to be amended in here, or if that, especially if, I don't know if this was written prior to lowering the deck. Are you guys still planning on the 619 spaces?
I think we're at 674 now, actually.
Okay. Well, because in here it says the lesser of 619.
We're planning on, we wanted to craft a certain amount of flexibility so that if for some reason we ended up doing less beds, that we still didn't have to have a super high parking ratio.
Right, but as I read this, you guys couldn't do 675 because it says the lesser of 619 or 50%.
The minimum is the lesser of.
So
The minimum parking requirement is
I
the
think
lesser of. Right.
in these, John, you bring out good points. This will be fine-tuned, is that correct, Nathan, with council and with planning
It
and
can
zoning?
be, yes, it can be, yeah, absolutely.
To make sure that it's accurate and falls within code and ordinances. So I think those are great points, and that's what we need to do in that area. Any other pressing questions?
Can I ask one more that's actually very important about this? It's about, because it has to do with the effect of the project.
Sure.
Okay. Maximum height in here is set. It says, the wording is and I understand you guys have planned on changing it, but at the same time, like I said, this is what goes by when it gets passed. It's just regulations of what you can do. It says the maximum height should not exceed the 84 feet 10 inches or whatever, measured from the adjacent grade. And as far as I know, that's the first time I've run across that, and especially with a step down, because if you measure from the adjacent grade on the Wall Street side of the parking deck, that puts it a whole lot higher than measuring from like Kiowee Trail. And I didn't know if we just need to adjust that wording so that we don't wind up with basically a 110-foot building from Kiowee Trail for the parking
We'd be
deck.
fine with that. I think Chirag, who's our architect, can probably speak a little bit more because we just want to make sure that we have the flexibility to build what we've shown you in that language.
Right, and all I want to make sure is that when we take a vote on this project, that we're voting on what we're actually perceiving to vote on. And that's what I mean, is if you say this and then say, well, the economics, it gets passed, and you say, well, the economics just worked out. We had to have these extra 100 spots, so we're going to throw that extra floor on there, because in the code, in the rule it passed says we can do it, so we're going to throw it on there. Right, and that's all I'm trying to double check. If that's something that needs to get changed or a note that needs to be made. That was one of the big ones that I happened to get to last, so it was last on my notes. And I'm not trying to monopolize time. I just thought all this stuff, as far as this being what we're actually, the pictures are something to look at or whatever, but they're the realization of this.
I think, yeah, we would be open to maybe splitting the parking deck height from the other,
Well, my point was including it, because right now with the wording you have, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but the general wording usually goes from a common point or the average height or the average elevation or whatever. But having it as adjacent, you guys could probably make an argument that, oh, the front of the parking deck is actually Wall Street. So that's the adjacent elevation. So we can go 84 feet, 10 inches from there instead of going 84 feet, 10 inches from Kiowee Trail. And I'm not saying that's what you're trying to do. I'm just, you guys this might get passed. Your company may have a disaster, and somebody might buy the project. And if this is the rules on the book,
right? Yeah.
I mean, that's all I'm saying is that once this goes in, this is what can be done.
I will say that we did put language in there that said it needed to be substantially similar to what you've seen, and so these would be attached to that ordinance as.
I think you could make the argument that substantially similar could be visual if you just added a floor, that it still had the same appearance, that it would be.
I can speak to the height.
Okay.
So we, per code, for the type of building that we're building, we can't go above 85 feet for that top level of we can't add another story to it. Or we're building an entirely different type of building and an entirely different cost of building. So what we proposed fits within that building, under 85 feet.
Right, for your construction limitations, but if you were to build it a different way, then you could go higher, correct?
And the precast parking deck is less than 85 feet
It is
tall,
less than
so
85
he's,
feet.
yeah.
Okay, that's all. I wasn't saying you guys were trying to pull something. These are just things when I went through there. I wanted to make sure that we, like I said, when we're voting on something, we're voting on what we're voting on. And
Right.
John, I'll interject and say, just for maybe your comfort level, certainly anytime we were to add a floor to either structure, staff, and I think you guys would agree that we would consider that a major amendment to the project, and so it would have to come back in front of the planning commission and go through the whole process again.
Regardless of the ordinance?
Yes, I think that would be a major change. You agree,
That's
Jacob?
correct. If what's been depicted is, five, because I think the parking deck's only 5 stories, and if they were at a 6-story, that would be.
Yeah, I would consider that major. Now, there has, in the past, there's been some gray area of what's a minor amendment, what's a major amendment, but I would certainly consider a floor on either structure a major amendment, and I don't think you or the developer could really argue against that.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Recognize Commissioner
Andy,
Allen.
thank you for being here again, and I really appreciate the effort to respond to the issues that have been raised. I'm not on the technical level as John is. I'm more conceptual here. And I'm back to my comment to you the first time you presented. This is not what I was expecting, okay? I don't think this is what the citizenry was expecting either. I see a beautiful, beautiful development that's for the students. 1,325 beds. How many are going to be non-students? I don't know. That's a question. But in terms of looking at, we have 19 PDs in the city, and I haven't been to all of them, but I've been around to most of them. And those 19 PDs all respond to the students. And I know the citizenry, when we entered into this process, 4 years ago? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was all about building a vibrant downtown that's responsive to the needs and wishes and desires of the citizenry. What you developed is beautiful, no question about it. It's better than what we see there now, no question about it. But as we talk about PDs and we talk about what the criteria are to support a PD, a couple of things. Obviously, it talks about open space and enhancing and promoting open space. You certainly have enhanced the environment. The question is that open space, you say you're going to have a minimum of 20% open space, but you're also going to have 90% impervious. And I realize open space can be impervious as well. But that's not even meeting the standard of an RM4, which is the most densely populated area that we have in the city in terms of our zoning. So you're not even meeting the open space requirement of our most densely area zoning. We also talk about making sure we're enhancing. One of the other criteria is enhancing the quality of life of the citizenry. That's clearly in there in terms of responsibilities for a PD. I don't know how that is. I've looked at the other 19 PDs in this city, and I'm trying to work out how those have enhanced the quality of life of our citizenry. Certainly has enhanced the tax base, no question about it. But as we talk about the citizenry and their day-to-day activity, how is this PD going to enhance their quality of life? I'm not sure how the other 19 have enhanced their quality of life as I've walked around and driven around. Third thing, which is most problematic for me, and I don't know how we recognize the transportation study. I literally went to Bixby this morning to the parking garage. There are 372 parking slots for students. 340 of them were full this morning. I counted them. You're talking about another 700 or 675 parking slots for students. So we're going to have roughly, 1,000 cars with the potential of coming out on Kiwi Trail one way or the other, or going through your property and coming out on Wall, making a right-hand turn on Tiger, or coming out on College Avenue, and right now can make a left or a right, but it sounds like we're going to move to right only. And in terms of a PD, it clearly says that the developer must offer various options for mitigating the stress on overly stressed roads. I don't know how on this earth you're going to do that. And so I'm sitting here thinking what the citizenry has said for the last 4 years since I've been involved with this project. And what you've presented is beautiful. And I certainly appreciate the changes you've made. I think they're positive. But this is not what the citizenry is expecting. And if I'm wrong, you all have to tell me that. And I don't know how you can address some of those critical factors that are required to support a PD. Now, I know that's a lot, but help me respond to all that.
Let me help with that. Nathan, can you, from a planning zoning, I'm looking at the rules in plan development districts and how things may change with density, how things may change over time due to economic conditions, due to different things, because plan developments take a longer period of time. And so there are rules in section codes, section code 629-270 allow flexibility in the development that result in improved design and things like that, et cetera, et cetera. Can you kind of address that question? Does this fit within the zoning or the intent of Clemson Next and the catalyst area, which there were catalyst areas defined and adopted by City Council, which they have asked that they would do that, and also explain how that might lessen traffic on the road by doing that?
I can give you an opinion, certainly. In terms of zoning code, a PD is its own ordinance. I think you guys realize that's what you're creating tonight, as well as all of the PDs that Larry referenced throughout history. Now, when Clemson Next, before my time, but when the city entered into the planning process of Clemson Next, it did designate Uptown as a catalyst area, and there was a number of student housing beds there. This plan adheres to that Clemson Next plan. And then in terms of traffic, ultimately I'm going to rely on the engineers and their traffic study for that. They have shown numbers that do not require that red light at Kiwi Trail, and those are SCDOT engineers and private engineers. Our engineer is reviewing that right now. So I would have to rely on the data provided by the engineers to determine what the traffic count will be, and right now that does not require the flow.
I know I'm out of place, but I remember this conversation with Dockside. This exact conversation, we had a transportation study done and we had it presented. Art and John, you may have been on the council then. Dockside, right now, that red light, I've sat on the middle of the bridge 2 times waiting to get across the bridge because of that red light. And the transportation study said, with that, putting in that red light, that'll mitigate the problems on the bridge. I'm sorry. Wow. Nathan, I'm sorry. I just can't buy that.
Let's come back to where we are here. Let's come back to where we are. Are there any other comments from commissioners or questions relative to the action item that we take?
I know there's been question about whether residents will walk from this planned development to campus. And when you, Larry, mentioned going through and there's 378 parking spaces and there's 340 cars, what I think is, yay, the cars are in the parking spaces and they're not on the road. So in my mind, that's 340 people that are walking to campus. And that's, because I do think these kids are gonna walk, but I mean, I don't know.
No, I
you know what I mean? I'm like, yay, they're in parking spots and they're not on the road.
The only thing I'll piggyback on that is that the whole plan has to work together eventually. The Clemson Next has to all come together. And I think city council has that plan, or the city has that plan in place for this all to come together, because yes, it's wonderful if they're walking to campus, but if they have to go to Publix to the grocery store, you're adding those cars that are having to come back out. So I think it is, you know, it's patience, and nobody has any patience, including myself. But, you know, it does meet up or fall in line with that Clemson Next and also the comprehensive plan that's been presented. But until we can get to that next point, I know it'll be a lot of frustration moving forward with that amount of vehicles and parking spaces and people.
Any other comments from the commission? Okay, normally we will only do public comments during public time, but go ahead.
I just thought of it, so I apologize. Just clarification, do you guys, can you pull up the slide where it shows where the roundabouts are? So I'm a visual person too, and I'm very confused as to where those roundabouts are actually going to be. Like what are they taking the place of? So the one that's closest to 123, where is that going to be? What's it going to be sitting on top of? What are you knocking down to put that on there?
So you can see it's kind of shown in our ground floor plan, since we're only doing our half of the street.
So right now there's those Lakeview townhomes. Are they going to be affected by the roundabout? Is that where the roundabout's going to go? Where's the roundabout going to go?
The roundabout is a concept. It's not a definitive. The purpose of showing those roundabouts was the potential, as Abernathy Park is improved, that you could put those in to try to, for lack of a better word, discourage through traffic during peak events. If there's a lot of pedestrian oriented events happening on Kiowee Trail in an improved Abernathy Park, those roundabouts allow traffic to turn around. But the intent is to always have traffic going through there right now. Those roundabouts may or may not happen. Where they're shown on that plan, you know where the restroom facility is, on the north side or the 123 side of the park? It's actually just kind of up from that. It would not impact that. It would be past the last driveway of those townhomes. Really wouldn't affect any of that in there. We think there's enough room in there that if, as a part of the park improvement plan, that those roundabouts wanted to be considered, we think it could fit there. And then on the south side, on the Kiowee Trail side, it would actually be about lined up with the very southernmost drive we have into the project. Again, the idea was to open up as much of that central park area, the relationship between the private park and the public park, so that Kiowee Trail isn't a thoroughfare, if you will, while we're trying to enhance the public access of that area.
Make it feel comfortable.
That's it.
Make it feel comfortable for pedestrians to walk.
Yeah, the thought was maybe we put some traffic calming, maybe it's some brick paver, some pedestrian crossings to go from this project over into, again, you have to imagine an improved park, or even the existing sidewalks and trails of Abernathy Park, because, there's a lot of folks that walk through there now, and just the pedestrian connections alone, I think can enhance that people can walk, up to the north if they wanted to go toward the Smoothies or Pixie and Bill's or wherever, or if they're coming back the other way, and, instead of walking out to College Avenue, they could walk kind of behind the Bixby and behind,
There's trails back there, right?
Yeah, the trails that go up to Spasson Street. There's just multiple ways that you can go about that, but that was the whole point of the roundabout showing those, as a potential.
So if you do put in the roundabouts though, I would just have to see it, I guess, better, because right now, to me, the way that you're explaining it, it's gonna be in the middle of, it's gonna affect the townhouses somehow.
It would not.
Okay, so are the townhouses gonna be affected at all with your project?
I don't know what you mean by at all.
Are they going to be leveled and be used for something?
Not as a part of this project.
Okay, and what about the buildings that are on Wall Street, like where the Potbelly Deli is? And those houses back there that have businesses?
That is a part of the purple area that was shown, yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Everything in
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did that answer your question? Okay. So now it's time to call for a motion on the item. Is there a motion on the item before us?
I'll make a motion that we send a positive recommendation to city council for, make sure I get it right, the actual, let me get my notes right here. Thank you. PUD-000-177-2023 Clemson Hub.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and we have a second for positive recommendation on PUD 000-177-2023. Is there any other discussion? Seeing that there's no discussion, let's call for a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Do you have everybody?
No.
Okay. No. What's that? All opposed, raise your right hand. The motion carries. It'll be sent to City Council. Okay, next thing on the agenda item is an informal public meeting during the planned development rezoning request. This is going to be on the Grange, and there will be a conceptual plan that comes up. So if the applicant can come up and start that presentation on the Grange. Similar time limits on what we do here, but if you need extensions, we will be able to grant that. You just need to ask for that.
Well, for that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Cassidy Machado Michaud. I'm a landscape architect and land planner at DPR Design, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Just give us just a moment, please.
This is the informal public.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is it.
Public while he's presenting.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I spin this thing? This spin?
There we go.
Sure.
All right.
Opened it up about 15 times, but
But I don't want to have a side conversation, but while they're waiting to do that, this last time, you talked about
Okay. Split the vision.
kind of.
So like I said, my name is Cassidy Machado Michaud. I'm a landscape architect and land planner for DPR Design out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Been working with Youngblood Development on the overall master plan for the Grange property of 123 and Chapel Hill Road. Oh wait, there we go. Okay. Yeah, that's all right.
You want to sit here? Yeah. Here, how about that? Sorry, guys. Let's take a 5 seconds.
Our technology needs
So I'm talking a little bit, before we look at plans, talk a little bit about, who we want to be as a community. And what I think we want to do here is we want to respond to the context, the natural context that's there, and also the built context that's around us there. And so at the Grange, you're going to find a neighborhood focused on fostering a sense of community, growing together, and engaging with one another in nature. So our aspirations for this project are, we want to be the definition of live, work, and play. We want to focus on connecting with nature and create a true multi-generational community. We want to become both a destination and a home. So starting out with a little bit of site information and context. So we're located off of Chapman Hill Road, right off of 123. What's unique about this project is the phase 1 of the project is currently under construction. The Grange, the homes there. It's about 148 acres, 199 homes currently being built there. So with this application, what we're proposing is bringing that in along with phase 2 of that development. Into the city of Clemson under this PD application. So the yellow bubble there is currently phase 1, which is currently being developed, and the red number 2 there is the additional area that we're looking at bringing in as well. It's currently in Pickens County. So the existing conditions, we have the plans for the existing subdivision overlaid on an aerial here. Some key things that you'll note here are 18 Mile Creek is defining this planned southern border here, and that's going to define the limits of the application here. We're working with a significant amount of floodplain and also Duke transmission line that we're working within. And you can also see on the far left the limits of the Patrick Square development. So the existing condition, what we're looking at here, the red areas are the areas identified for future development. So the number 1 is identified, we're calling that the Grange Town Center and the Creekside Commercial Village. The number 3 is an existing commercial structure, which we're going to loop into this project as an adaptive reuse project, looking at ways of amenitizing the Duke transmission line right away and bringing public accessibility to the floodplain areas in 18 Mile Creek. So moving on to our conceptual plan here. So we're going to talk about 2 different development areas as part of this PD ordinance. Development area 1 is going to be the existing subdivision, the 148 acres. Development area 2 is going to be the future proposed development, which is a mix of uses. You'll see this yellow dotted line, which is the proposed alignment of the Green Crescent Trail extension from Meadows Park. You'll also see in this orange dashed line here is an offshoot or a connection point from the Green Crescent Trail to a proposed public parking area that will be open, to residents as well as, greater residents of the area to come and enjoy the Green Crescent Trail and, the parks and open space and businesses that we're proposing in this. So moving into development area 1, there's identified areas within this for potential future development. You can kind of see the areas identified and highlighted in yellow here. So we're proposing to leave this mostly as is with this proposed development, with potentially the addition of a few lots in these yellow areas identified here. So moving to the town center. So this is the flag graded pad you can see from 123 as you're driving into and out of town here. So what we want to do is create a vibrant mixed-use, walkable town center for both residents to enjoy as well as the greater community to come here. So this is going to have a mix of residential, commercial, office, employment uses here in the Grange Town Center area. What we also want to do is amenitize the Duke Power transmission with walking trails, big swaths of planting, and we're also showing where that number 6 is. You can maybe see my cursor here, it's lagging a little bit. But the proposed public parking area, which would be under the Duke transmission lines, but that would be, again, public parking available for the community and residents alike. There we go. So looking at the building form, what we wanted to do was create a pedestrian-focused development. So instead of having the parking on the fronts of the buildings and the vehicular circulation along the fronts of the buildings, we wanted to flip that on its end. So you'll see parking fields adjacent and behind the buildings, and the buildings focused around and creating a dynamic pedestrian-focused core. So the first floor activation, we would have retail shops, dining, outdoor plazas, outdoor dining, and then, above that, potentially you would have additional employment or commercial or residential uses there. This is highlighting that public space and some precedent images of what that space may look like. A mixture of plazas, public plazas, open greens, outdoor dining, and places for the tenants to kind of create an indoor-outdoor dynamic commercial environment. Moving over to the Creekside Commercial Village, so this is from the transmission line down to 18 Mile Creek. What we have at the top is the adaptive reuse of what we're calling the head building, so it's an existing commercial building at the which we would be adaptively reusing as a more dynamic commercial use. A mix of residential employment, hospitality, and commercial, framing the Creekside Drive down to 18 Mile Creek and a future bridge crossing there. The Green Crescent Trail would be coming through along 18 Mile Creek, connecting Nettles Park, Patrick Square, and our community to these commercial areas. And we're proposing a Creekside Park along 18 Mile Creek, which would be a public park, which is amenitized with potential amphitheater area, walking trails with natural and hard surface, and potentially a pedestrian bridge crossing 18 Mile Creek. Taking a closer look at the buildings and how they create and frame the spaces, and then looking at the public space and open space network, overlaying the future alignment of the Green Crescent Trail and our connectivity spur there. So now get into the program and metrics. So this is kind of the nuts and bolts of what we're proposing. So the overall development area of phase 1 and phase 2 is 148 acres. We're proposing an open space of around 30 total acres of open space. We're proposing a mix of residential, so townhomes, mixed use, live, work, condos, apartments, multifamily, single family, a minimum of 231 units and a maximum of 620. And if the plan is built out as shown today, there would be 244 total residential units. For the non-residential, that's basically everything other than a housing unit. We're proposing committing to a minimum of 65,000 square feet of commercial and a maximum of 400,000 square feet. And if it's built out as currently reflected on the plan, it would be 294,000 square feet. For development area 1, currently the permitted residential number is 199. We're proposing a maximum of 210. Again, identified in these yellow areas here as areas of future development, so potentially another 11 dwelling units in development area 1. And in development area 2, we're proposing the minimum of 32 residential units, a maximum of 410. Currently reflected on the plan is 34. For non-residential, we're proposing a minimum of 65,000 square feet and a maximum of 400,000 square feet. As shown on the current plan, there's 294,000 square feet. So that's our presentation and our plan. Happy to answer any questions.
So at this time, if there are any questions for the presenter, if you'd like to come up and ask those, he'll be able to address those.
My name is John Ron Lively. I live at 207 Founders Boulevard in LaGrange. First off, my family actually just moved to Clemson area in June, and this is a great rendering of something that goes in Charlotte. I lived in Charlotte for 6.5 years, lived in all the commercial, everything mixed use, and when we were here, when we first moved down here and we first moved to the Grange, we were even sold on a community that was going to be a multi-generational community with amenities and all these other things. Then now we've come to find out that there are no amenities in our neighborhood, that the only green spaces that are in our neighborhood currently are going to be taken away. And so there's going to be no green spaces for any kid that lives in that neighborhood to play. I specifically was sold the house I was sold because there was these green spaces are going to be across the street from you and beside your house. On top of that, like I said, I love the idea. I lived in Charlotte for 6.5 years. I love the commercial buildings and everything else. But on top of a neighborhood that's supposed to be built for families and taking any green space away from any kid, I mean, the last I checked, we need kids outside more than we need kids inside. Because the last I checked and the last I've dealt with them, there's too many inside working with their thumbs, not working with their brains and their imaginations outside. But outside of all that, the reason I even came tonight was Chapman Hill Road, and that bridge on Chapman Hill Road does not even currently support the construction traffic that is being done in the Grange. That bridge, and I just wanted this to be on public record so everybody knows that this bridge is rated for 25 tons, and daily there are trucks that go over that outweigh that weight limit by 15 to 20 tons. We have expressed our concerns. We were told that it's in the plan. People know, but until there's another way out, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, if something happens to a resident in there and that bridge fails because of negligence of people not taking that into consideration, there's going to be a lot. I mean, there's already a lot of angry people in the neighborhood because of a lot of the stuff we were sold about this neighborhood beforehand. But there is no other way in and out. There's no way to get on 123 unless you drive a four-wheel drive vehicle, and it is very dangerous. And I've personally went and looked underneath that bridge. It's the old type of, basically wood-pillared bridge. And like, if there wasn't 40-ton trucks driving over that thing every single day, it would be awesome. But there's 40-ton trucks driving over that multiple times every hour, every day. And it's a huge safety concern. And I just need to make sure that the city of Clemson knows that that's what y'all inherited when y'all annexed that development in from Pickens County. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Duly noted. Any other public comments?
Hi, I'm Amy Anderson. I'm at 129 Ridgeline Road. As my neighbor said, we were promised things that we haven't seen. And I had some questions actually on not just the green areas, but we were told there would be walking trails within. And there's also problems with the traffic, with the people, because the roads are so straight. And I mean, we won't even get into the builder construction and stuff that's all over the road and the garbage and all that. I did get into it, but there's a lot of problems with the garbage that is left over from the construction. I'm talking plastic bottles and cans and nails. Like, we have pictures of nails on the road that were never cleaned up. So that's a different thing. But in the development of this area, in addition to the green space and these poor kids that are out, like you said, right now they can go under, they can go on those green spaces kind of, but there is no, there's no walking trails, there's no place for them. It just seems like it's all about building the houses and getting them up like that, and it doesn't matter about the people that are there. So I think that's my biggest thing, is that I was thinking there was gonna be more to it. We actually moved up here. Thank you for having South Carolina move up here. We moved up here from Atlanta to get away from the traffic. We have the same problem with the road there, that people, you can't get past with that little road. And Mr. Allen talking about the traffic there at, I think it's University and Tiger. I said we didn't move far enough to the country because that's so bad, and actually have people say they're not gonna go to Seneca because of that intersection being so bad. So thanks for the chance to speak, and I'd be happy to talk with you further if you ever wanted to reach out.
Duly noted. Thank you for your comments.
Please, ma'am, will you please sign that?
Oh, thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
My name's Larry Sherburne. I live at the Grange too. And with this proposal, and it's whatever the time limit is and when it goes through, in my opinion, that proposed road to 88 and that adjoining to the Chapman Hill should be a priority. The bridge over Easley, there's always an accident waiting to be happening when turning both ways. I've seen so many close calls, and it's just not doable. So I think with your proposal, that road to 88 needs to be done quickly, and not wait till everybody's in another neighborhood and all the traffic is trying to get on that bridge. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Duly noted. I believe you wanted to speak.
Hey. So my name is Elizabeth Melvin. I also live in the Grange. My family just recently moved here from Zachary, Louisiana, and we used to live off of a street that got busier and busier and busier. People kept developing and developing and developing, but nothing was done to improve the street. And I can tell you with much certainty as an engineer that that road is not rated for the amount of traffic that you would need to sustain the amount of retail that is being proposed in that area. The other questions I had that I've been writing since I was looking at that is, well, and then just as a resident myself, I really truly feel like we were promised amenities, just as everybody else said, but I don't feel like anybody has asked the residents at all what we would like in that space. And so, which I really appreciate that there's a lot of stuff coming in for the community, but there's not anything that seems to be coming in for the local community, for that area where we all paid good money to live into that space. The other question I had, there's a number of units that you say that are going in. One of the biggest problems from the community I just moved from is that it grew so fast that the schools could not keep up. We moved here specifically for the schools. And I don't want to see the same thing happen to Clemson schools, where we grow so big, so fast, that the schools don't have time to keep up. And that's a big deal, because this is a shining light in a state where education, granted, I came from a state where education was great to begin with, but Clemson is a shining light in this state, and I would hate to see anything else happen to it. And I'm also going to reiterate things about the green spaces. I have 3 small children who should be going outside to play, and I agree that if we don't have those green spaces in our community where we build our houses, where are they gonna go? Because they're not gonna go walking all the way to the walking trail, and quite frankly, that makes me a little nervous. They're a little too far away. I want them someplace close. So a park would be great. I mean, just a little play area even though Nettles isn't that far away, just a little place where they can ride their bike would be great. So that is all I have to say.
Thank you so much for your comments. They're duly noted. Is there anyone else that would like to speak of what they've seen or proposed? There have been great comments so far.
for the time. My name is Greg Wales. I also live in the Grange, been there about a year. I think we've heard the people speaking so far aren't really having negative responses to what's being proposed building-wise, although there probably could be. I have a specific question on the, at the back of it where you're going to put the townhouses. Are those going to be sales or rentals?
Yeah, am I allowed to answer?
Yeah, you're allowed to answer.
They're planned to be for sale.
For sale, okay. So you have no intention of those ever being rented. They're exclusively going to be sold.
I don't know in terms of kind of the duration of the life of the homes, but right now the intention is that they're for sale.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
No, as part of the PD ordinance that we're developing, there are going to be some limitations to kind of the ability of those for sale homes to transition to short-term or long-term rentals.
Okay. I don't want to rehash what's been said about Chapman Hill Road. It's a mess. If you drive out there, you'll see. I think it's important that the first step in your development needs to be additional egress out of the community instead of going up to Issaquah Trail. Going up there, that's fine right now, but if you have additional development of residential, and I think the community is approximately, 60% built out at this point, you're still going to add maybe 60 homes in there, 60 families in there. We have to have additional egress off of Chapman Hill Road instead of on Issaquah Trail. That has to be probably the first part of the entire development, is finishing the roadways up. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. They're duly noted. Is there anyone else?
One more question.
Please come up. And part of that reason is our microphones are in the ceiling and people online can only hear.
Just a quick question. What are the plans for getting the Chapman Road finished and have a good paved road into the green?
Defer to Nathan.
It gets fixed sporadically every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, the city's working alongside the county to develop a plan for paving Chapman Road.
Do you know when?
I don't. The city engineer is not here this evening. I'm the director of development, so I couldn't give you a date with any integrity, but I do know that there have been talks.
Okay.
Does that include the bridge? I'm sorry? Does that include
Point of question, does that include the bridge fix as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
There any other public input into what you've seen tonight? You provided a lot of great information, and that's very much appreciated. Please.
Amend my comment about the bridge on Chapman Hill. With the rain we've had today, we have typically on the bridge 3 inches of standing water. The bridge is the low point, and there is no drainage into the creek underneath it. Okay? You need 400
Any other comments? We'll make sure everybody gets the opportunity to be heard. Any comments from anyone here? Okay.
Yes. I'm looking at the town center concept, and there's large retail buildings, be it for food or merchandise or whatever, and I don't see any access to the back of the buildings for delivery trucks or garbage or trash collection. I was going to ask if you're going to work with that.
Yeah, so
I see it mostly landscaped in back of them.
right, so the fronts of the building that we're talking about, obviously we would address the parking lots as well, but the idea is the main activation of these buildings is onto that central courtyard or that central amenity space, so the retail shops would open onto that. The back of the house would be collected interior to the building, and then there would be designated loading and unloading spots along this parking lot aisle, if that makes sense.
Yes, I've worked with truck lines that made local deliveries, and it's really tough to go in through the front of the building. That's something that just very seldom works. So I was wondering if there's any provision for designing a route back there.
Yeah, so the architecture hasn't obviously been developed to a point to identify those locations, but there will be what you're calling a back-of-house integrated into these buildings for trash and loading and things like that. But the idea is that the main activated frontages would be along this public open space and, you know, along the quote-unquote backside, which is addressing the parking lot and drive aisle. That's where a section of that would be screened off, and you could back a box truck or back a you know, a trash truck up to those areas.
Okay, I'm looking too at the parking for the trail there.
Yep.
I presume there'll be no buildings put up there, like even a shelter or something like that, because that's the Duke Power right away. They demand no permanent structures at all.
Correct.
Okay.
So that being said, we are, as part of gonna have a trailhead for our connection to the Green Crescent Trail. So there will be some sort of wayfinding structure kind of guiding people that are parking there that do want to kind of navigate to
Signs and stuff like that. Yeah,
correct.
They would allow that. Thank you.
Any other on the informal comments?
I do have a question about the families that have come up and mentioned green space when they purchased their lot. Are you referring to the developer wanting to develop these four? Okay. So your general concern is when you mention the green space in your neighborhood, is the four yellow areas?
It's mainly those right there at the roundabout, because the one yellow, actually we're all on mailboxes.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. And for the developer, so these four yellow areas, the idea was to put more homes in this space. The development wouldn't be necessarily for a park, or you're wanting to put more homes.
Yeah, as part of the application, we're requesting up to 11 more residences, a mixture of the existing, you know, more of the existing townhomes and single-family homes. And we identified conceptually that they may be located in the areas that are identified in yellow here. But yes, it will be more homes, not parks and open space.
So would you be open to putting a park in or something? I mean, I'm listening to the residents and they're frustrated, and as a mom, I can see where you bought a piece of property thinking there was green space and then now, would you be open to, and you don't have to answer that, could you please be open is really what I'm saying, maybe something that would be beneficial to a family when they're looking for green space. And if you're taking something from the residents, what are you giving back to them in that area? And you don't have to answer it, I'm just saying.
No, I appreciate that comment, and then I think just based on the feedback from the actual residents, it's something that I missed as part of this process. So what I'm going to do is reach out directly to them, and I think have requests that we do gather it together.
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Walk through this in more detail with them.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Please step to the podium.
My name is Danny Del Marco. I just had a question on the yellow highlighted spots. It's right in here. Especially where it comes down on the townhome section on the bottom. I don't know if you can see where that little curvature is. When we actually own or building a home in the Grange, and what was marketed from the company is that bottom area, that's how you access the walking trail. So if you were to go to the Grange today, on that bottom area there, the salespeople there are going to tell you that's where you walk to go to the walking trail. So now this is something totally new that none of us are aware of, but that's going to take away more space from the kids to even have a way, because the way they market it, you go down and around those power lines and come straight up. So if you put those townhouses down there, you're taking some more space away from the kids, or anywhere where they're actually supposed to have access to that green trail.
So anything that we we do, we wouldn't take away access. So if there is a future development kind of in that crescent down there, we would still provide public access through that area to access the floodplain.
Yeah, but I would just definitely say the way they're marketing it and the way it's shown in their design plan there, if you go in there, there's no talk of any of this. And if you talk to the salespeople up there right now, especially where that arrow is pointing, that's been the main sales point, I think, to everybody, is saying, if you bought the house to the right of that, that's public space, that's gonna be a park. At least it was the way it was marketed to me too, as well.
Thank you so much. Point of information and point of clarification. So what you have said is that y'all are going to get together with the residents at the Grange and address their concerns or have some type of meeting. Was that what I heard you say?
Yeah, that's something I'm going to reach out to, and anybody that wanted to kind of gather around the plan. I think that more people probably would be involved if we did it somewhere closer, well, one, less formal, and then...
And also that you would bring up to the other folks that you're willing to consider additional amenities for the residents that they've talked about, that you will bring that up.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Peterson. For marketing, that's what we were told, the same thing. We just closed last July. We were told that is going to be the entrance to the walking trail. We were also told that that is going to be green space. We were also told we're getting a rec center, we're getting a pool, we're getting all these amenities, and there's a sign that the RB has up, amenities coming soon, and now we're getting told we are getting no amenities, zero. So I have 4 kids. If kids have nowhere to go, kids are going to get in trouble. If they have nothing to do, and especially from what we were told, that's why we moved. I moved down from New Jersey, thank goodness, and moved here and brought my 4 kids with me because this is what we were told. And now the carpet's getting ripped out from our feet. It seems like everything that we were told in the beginning has completely changed. So we just, as residents that have kids, that we just need something for our kids to do in the neighborhood rather than ride in the street. There's residents that don't like our kids riding bikes in the street because that's the only place they can go. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Your comments are duly noted. Is there anybody else? Anybody else?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Cassidy, mostly it's about the part, and it's not where I live, but I know people, we have a Facebook page, and people talk about it. So where it's going, I don't even know which one to look at. Where the homes are when you first come in on Founders Boulevard, right? Where above it says potential areas of future. That area right there, those houses have driveways in the back, so there's a road behind them.
Yep.
Is this showing that there's going to be a row of trees between the parking lot and those homes, and that's it? I know
On the commercial side, the town center side?
Yeah.
So there's 2 things. We would provide a vegetated buffer along behind that alleyway, but also the grade difference, as you know, from the front of the project to the back, I mean, it's pretty significant. So, you know, from the back of your home, even from the 2nd floor, you would really be almost eye level with the parking lot. So you would be looking at that sloped hill behind the alley.
I could see them being worried about security and that kind of thing. And one other request, I don't have children, but I have a dog. Can we get some dog stations put in, please? Thank you. With poop bags.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
They're duly noted. Any other comments from any of the commissioners at this point?
I don't know how it necessarily applies for communities like this that have HOAs or whatever, but I was going to mention the city does have a dog station program available that you could look into. I think it just requires a sponsor, and they'll provide the station and supplies. You just have to, do we have to do the install? Who does the install?
It's through the engineering department, but they used to, you can look it up on their website.
I don't know what kind of HOA situation or anything's going on in there right now, but I just wanted to put that information out there that if for some reason it's not made available, there may be another option through the city to get one.
Any other comments before we close public session, informal meeting? Thank you so much for showing up and addressing this. We will move on to our next order of business. Any advisory items?
No, sir.
Are there any discussion items?
I have nothing planned.
Are there any staff reports?
Yes.
Okay.
Breaking news, I'll say mark your calendars, March 12th. Should be the next steering committee meeting for our consultants for the comp plan will be in town. We're having trouble trying to schedule around spring break. I think that, so there's a council meeting on the 11th, I believe, so tentatively March 12th. We should receive, I think Larry asked me recently, we should receive the existing conditions report from them very soon. And as soon as I get that, I'll email it to you guys to look over. That's just going to detail what they saw the last time they were in town by gathering info while they were here. And then there'll be a public visioning session, probably at the fire hall is what we're thinking about, where we'll invite the general public, but the steering committee that you are all, well, I should say most of you were a part of last time, we'll meet before that to talk with your direct concerns from the materials that you receive. Of course, staff will be going over those, and that'll be your time to start talking about how, this is just that, again, the existing conditions report, but this will flow into all the elements of the comp plan that you guys will be looking at later.
So this is going to be in the evening on the 12th?
It will be in the evening, yep.
Okay, I teach at
I'm
the
sorry.
university nearby,
We're actually
so I
meeting on
won't.
the 11th, according to my calendar.
Oh, yes, planning commission on the 11th. That's correct.
Okay.
It's, you know, the way council is twice a month, and then you guys are once a month, and then we have BARB. So we were trying to find that somebody was going to double up. So I'm sorry, but they're scheduling from Chicago too. But we're about to do a really big social media push. We started today with like, what is a comp plan? We've revamped our social media in the city, so you'll see some of that going along. But I wanted you guys to know first that was coming.
Any need to discuss planning commission representation at council meetings?
We don't have anything coming up.
The vote you took tonight will go to council at some point. We'll have to work with the developer to schedule when they can be in town for that, or if they need to be in town for it, but that's the only thing I can think of.
Okay, and you talked about other events and workshops already.
Yep,
So,
sorry.
is there any other business?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So adjourned.